Hi and welcome to the Faxon Blog and Podcast.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Faxon Podcast. We're on episode 55 now.
55.
Season 2. And me and Dustin have a super exciting guest today. She's one of my favorite people in the industry right now. She's got an awesome blog that combines two of my favorite things in the world, okay? Wine and guns. So we'd like to welcome Monica Newman of Pinot and Pistols to the podcast. Hi, Monica.
Hey, guys. Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for joining us. Now, just let everyone know, where are you joining us from? Where are you at right now?
Yeah, I am in the Portland, Oregon metro area, and it is just a beautiful fall day today. It's nice and cloudy, very classic Oregon.
Yay.
It's awesome.
Yay.
We're dealing with summer part 2 right now.
It was nice this weekend, and then I got to 90 again, so we're kind of over
it's
it.
But a little muggy. Well, Monica, super excited to have you. Glad that Emily was able to track you down and get you on the show this week. But just to, get started, if you wouldn't mind just giving people like your 1,000-foot view, bio. How did you, get into firearms, and then kind of what brought you to having this, having this brand, if you will, online, this idea of Pinot and Pistols, and how that took form?
Yeah, absolutely. So I did not grow up around guns at all. I'm from San Jose, California. Guns were not a part of our lives in any way. And then I moved to Oregon about 7 years ago. And it was at that point that I was living alone for the first time in my life, kind of exploring the state for the first time, like by myself, doing all these things by myself. And I'm like, oh my gosh, if something happened, I would have no way to defend myself, like at all. And that totally freaked me out. So about 4.5, 5 years ago, I started working with a private instructor, just like getting into guns. I wasn't necessarily thinking about concealed carry at that time, but I definitely wanted something for home defense. And then kind of immediately I was like, okay, this is something I'm super comfortable with. I enjoy it. And then I went down the concealed carry path. And about that time that I was getting my concealed carry permit, I wanted to post more about the firearm side of my life and all the things that I was learning. But being from where I'm from, and even in the Portland area now, a lot of the people in my life weren't super gun friendly. And so when I started posting about stuff, I got a lot of flack. It was not fun at all. So I decided to start another page where I could post about my journey into firearms and, interact with the community and all of that. But I wanted to put a little bit of a spin on it. So I was just brainstorming ideas one day, and I really like alliteration. So I was writing down words that started with the same letter, right? And I saw Pinot and Pistols next to each other on the page. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's it. It's perfect. Because here in Oregon, in the area where I live in, big wine region and known for Pinot Noir. And I love Pinot Noir. And so, that's kind of how Pinot and Pistols was born, and just took it from there. And it's been a bit of a journey.
Yeah.
Coming up 4 years now of the page and the blog. So yeah, it's been fun.
That's awesome.
And then, when you talked about not growing up, with firearms or what have you, and getting into it in adult life, was that just more, your family was against it, or they just weren't really active in it, didn't care either way? It's been kind of interesting throughout all these 55 episodes. And when we have folks that we haven't talked to before on, some of them, they totally grew up with it and it was just really part of their lives. And then we've had people too in the past that, grew up in families that were kind of adamantly against firearm ownership, and then they just kind of came to a realization, maybe even much like yourself, where, hey, I'm on my own for the first time. What do I do for defense? What do I do to take care of myself? So what was that, atmosphere like for you growing up?
Yeah, it's kind of funny because my dad is actually from Oregon. So all of my extended family is here, and most of them are into guns. They're hunters. They're all in ag for the most part. So they have land where they can go and shoot. And they were kind of my first intro into guns. So my extended family, cool, awesome. My immediate family, I wouldn't say they're anti-gun by any means. It just wasn't a part of our lives. It was never something that we talked about. My dad grew up hunting, but being in San Jose, California, there's not a lot of opportunity for that kind of stuff. So yeah, it was just never really something that we talked about. But but my dad's cool with all of this. Like he thinks it's awesome. So
well, it is awesome. So.
Yeah. I haven't taken him to the range yet though. I need to find a time for him to come and visit. I got to get him out to the range.
Yeah. Well, and I love hearing that too, especially, we've talked a lot on previous episodes, but, we'll talk about it again this episode. We've seen such a big surge in new gun ownership this last year or two. And I think, in this industry, being someone who did grow up around firearms and did grow up shooting competitively with my family, it's one of those things, we kind of forget that everybody hasn't been doing this their whole lives. And especially you, I started working with you on a lockdown shoot. That's when I met you. I got to meet you at a, writer's event. Like I've, talked to you a bunch of times, and I never knew that you're actually like fairly new to this community, because I think we tend to kind of assume that we've all just been here forever. But I think, that's a really awesome take on it, is being able to, say, yeah, I did not grow up around this. This is not something that I have been around my whole life, but here I am, showing people how I do things. And I love that. I think it's what a lot of people are doing right now. Like everybody, there's so many new gun owners. And I think I would love to know what you think about being someone who has done it, who has had not previous knowledge. How did you kind of jump in? So what was like your first steps? Because I think a lot of people listening to this will want to know, oh, well, if she can do it, can I do it? So what do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it can be really intimidating. And that's kind of the whole thing that I wanted to show with my page, both on the wine side and the firearm side. It's like these topics don't have to be as intimidating as they seem. And the firearms community is so amazing. Like there certainly is a lot of competition, and it can be a little catty sometimes. But especially among like the women that I've met via Instagram, it's like I couldn't have done it without this community 100%. So I'm so glad that I decided to do this and found this space. But yeah, for me, I mean, getting started, it was scary. Like I was afraid of guns, and I didn't really have a good reason to be afraid of them. I just didn't know. And so the first step for me is always just to learn the basics. I'm like, show me how a firearm operates, teach me about gun safety, those kinds of things. And luckily I had friends at that time that were firearms instructors. So I got to start with people that I trust. And I think that's huge. Being able to, feel comfortable with the people that you're with. For me, that just creates a better environment for learning, especially when we're dealing with something like firearms. So yeah, that's really how I got started. And then it can feel really overwhelming when you're first getting started, because there's so much to learn. There's so many different platforms. There's it's which way do I go? And I think just being able to take those baby steps is really, I mean, that's the only way to do it. One bite at a time. You can't do it all at once. So just getting started and then going from there is really kind of how I did it.
Yeah. Education, 100%. I'm all about education, especially with firearms. I think I've mentioned before, I used to teach some basic firearms classes when I was at Georgia Southern, and my women's class was always the most exciting. But it's exactly like you said, you want to have an instructor that you trust, and you want to be around people that you're comfortable with. So I always encourage people, especially women that are just getting started in the shooting sports or in concealed carry, EDC, just knowing how a firearm works. Find an instructor that you like, go research some classes, see what people are saying, and find a good class that you think would fit you really well. People, I think, like to assume that there aren't really a lot of opportunities out there for firearms education right now. There's so many classes you can take. If you look, online, I mean, we've got awesome resources now with social media, find a class near you, see what other people are saying about, that indoor range that you're thinking about checking out, especially as new firearms owners are coming into this space. It can be scary, like you said, especially as a woman, because, we're constantly facing that trope of, we go into a gun shop and these guys behind the counter assume that we don't know what we want, and they're just going to try to sell us the smallest, cutest little pistol there. And as we both know, that is not always the best idea. Not the best.
I think luckily we're at a point now where, there's so many options for women, and we're kind of starting to break away from that mindset that you were just describing.
Yeah.
Which is awesome. Cause I've talked to women who've been concealed carrying for 10, 15 years. And it was so different when they first got started. But now it's like, we have all of these resources. We have so many products that are like made for women. There's so many women, you know, like me and like you on the internet talking about this stuff. And so it's really easy to find the information and to find, you know, people that you feel like you can learn from.
You know, one thing I was interested in looking at your site is just kind of how you, I mean, frame it all. I mean, obviously you have the Pinot and Pistols piece, but then you do your articles kind of in their own little tent posts. You know, you have some stuff on preparedness and some stuff on wine in general. And then you have some stuff, like I saw some recent articles about concealed carry and just like carrying in the car and things like that. How did you, you know, set out, or did you do it on purpose to kind of have those kind of tent posts in your brand to be like, okay, these are the areas that I'm going to focus in, and this is the content I'm going to feed to those areas?
Yeah. I mean, most of it for me is just real life. Like, these are the things that I'm encountering in my day to day. Like, you know, so it's easy in that sense because it's like, this is like the real stuff. But I also go based on like what my followers are asking me about. Like, for example, the concealed carry in the car series that I've been doing, like I've had so many people asking me questions about like, how do you do this? Like, what should I do? And so that's how I got that started. So it's a little bit of a mix of just like what's on my mind and what I'm facing day to day. And then like the kinds of questions that I'm getting from other people in my community.
Yeah, I think it's important that we mention Monica is like a jack of all trades. She's like on her channel woodworking, and she's like on her channel drinking wine, and she's on her channel showing us how to conceal carry in the car, and she's graphic designing. I mean, like, I was telling you before we even started this podcast, I was like, I just look at your channel sometimes and I'm like, this is beautiful. It's like a work of art. So if you haven't seen Monica's channel, Pinot and Pistols, definitely go check it out because it's going to have something for everybody. I love wine. I love guns. I'm on board. But I think that's so cool, you know, that it's just your life. So that should make this process, does it make the process easier or harder when you're planning out this content? Is it almost harder because it is so natural? You're trying to kind of frame it right? Or
I think the difficult thing for me has been the whole like planning aspect of it. Like, when I sit down and try to come up with like a content calendar for the month, I get stuck sometimes because like it truly is just day to day. Like, I'm trying to now, but I don't really ever plan out my content. It's just like, I'm kind of flying by the seat of my pants. I'm like, okay, this is what's on my mind today. Like, this is my outfit of the day, you know, those kinds of things. So when I try to like put structure around it, things feel more difficult.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think too, like, I've been trying to narrow things down because I felt like I was talking, because it is my life. I've been talking about like so many different things. Like, I started a garden this year and I'm doing all this self-reliance work and like this, that, and the other thing. But like, it was getting to be a little too much, you know? And so I'm having to dial it back a little bit. But then people are like, wait, I thought you were woodworking. Like, what are you working on right now? Like, how's the garden doing? This, that, and the other. So, I mean, yeah,
it's cool to hear though that they have that feedback, you know, that they're interested, you know, in your story and in your progress and in your projects. You know, one of the questions that I had, because when I think of anybody writing on wine, and I saw in your bio that it's like, you know, you're not like a sommelier or anything, you didn't go to school for it or whatever, but I'm telling you, much like a lot of gun owners, wine people can be intense. And like,
you chose like the two most intense groups of fans, like, especially like a specific type of wine too. So you've got like your Pinot Noir fans and you've got your gun fans, and you're like,
I mean,
got those specific people.
I mean, there's just like so many, you know, details with it. And especially for the people who aren't necessarily interested in growing those respective communities, they like to play stump and be like, I'm better than you, I'm smarter than you, and you're an idiot, you know, how dare you drink that Red Table wine, or how dare you carry a 380 or whatever. You know, so I mean, what are some of the parallels that you've seen just like in those communities, and what do you think are some of the you know, do firearms and wine kind of share some of the same barriers to entry, you know, for that type of fandom, for that type of community?
Yeah, I mean, I think like you just mentioned, it's like there's so many people that know so much.
Yeah.
And it's almost like from a beginner's perspective, it's like, oh, well, I can't talk about wine because I don't know as much as that person, or I can't talk about firearms because I don't know as much as that person. But I mean, really, like, people need to see the journey. Like, so many people compare their beginning to somebody else's middle or somebody else's end. And it's like, that's not how we should be really going about this. That's not the best way to learn. And so I'm glad that I've been able to kind of like start from the beginning and take people along with me as I go. But it's like, I don't want to go to school for wine. I don't want to, do all these things. Like, I just want to be able to enjoy it and like share what I'm learning along the way. And I think people do appreciate that. But yeah, I mean, I don't have anything bad to say necessarily, but both communities are just so supportive in certain ways to beginners. It's like, you meet someone that's like, oh yeah, I've been shooting guns my whole life. You're a beginner. Let me help you. Like, let me teach you. Same thing on the wine side. Like, I've become friends with this group of like local wine people here, and I'm the youngest one in the group. I have the smallest wine collection of the group. Like, I have the least amount of wine education out of the whole group, but like, they're like, okay, we're going to show you the way. And so I found that kind of on both sides, which has been just so amazing.
I think that's like, so that's another misconception. I think there are, yes, some people that are know-it-alls, and some people that don't want new people in the groups, in the industry. But, as a person who I've kind of jumped from different firearms to others. So like, I was in clay target sports, and then I was in, basic pistol instruction. And then I was, it's like, I've been in all these different groups, and, every time I meet people and I don't know as much as them, honestly, I've only been greeted with a lot of support. And I think it's exactly like you said, for the most part, you get to meet awesome people in this industry. And it's awesome that wine's like that too, that you get to meet people that really do want to bring you on this journey. And I loved what you said about, it's important to not compare your beginning to someone else's middle or end. I think that's important. I mean, in life in general, but also in firearms, it's one of those things. You can't compare yourself to someone who's been carrying their whole life. You can't compare yourself to, some big time instructor. You are on your own journey. And I told, on our last episode, we had a pistol instructor on, or a firearms instructor on, and I told him, I'm never done learning. I feel like, if there's a day that I think I know it all, I've like failed. I'm always learning. I never think I know everything. And I feel like you kind of take that approach too. I see like every blog post, every article, you're never like, I've learned all this and I know this now. You're always like, these are some options and opportunities and some things I've learned and some things I've tried. And that's what I love about your channel. I think we can all learn so much from what you're doing, because you're kind of doing this trial and error. We're on this, exactly like you said, we're on this journey with you. So we're getting to see all of it in practice.
Yeah. And I think it's so important to do that trial and error. Like, a lot of people want to skip that step. They're like, oh, well, this is what somebody else did, so I'm going to do exactly that thing. Yeah. But really, like, you need to go and put in the work and figure it out for yourself. Like, that's the only way that you're going to improve, like in any area in life. Like, you can't just take what somebody else did. You really have to go and do it. And so that's a lot of what I talk about. It's like, yes, this is what works for me, but you need to go and put in your effort too on your side.
Especially with concealed carry. With concealed carry. Yeah. What's been your journey with concealed carry? Because I think a lot of people have a lot of questions about concealed carry. And I think that's, you talk about a lot of things on your channel, but I think one area you cover really well is concealed carry for women specifically in different scenarios. So talk us through like your process of learning through concealed carry, because I just love learning about that.
Yeah. So when I was first getting started with, classes and instruction and stuff like that, I was shooting a full-size firearm. I'm like, okay, cool. But also, like, this is not going to be realistic for me if I want to conceal carry. So I would go to the range and like rent like 5 guns, like subcompact, single stack. Like, I kind of narrowed down like my requirements, and I rented things that fit those requirements. Right. And then I was kind of able to figure out, okay, what fits my hand well? Like, what do I like to shoot? This, that, and the other thing. And my first carry gun was a Glock 43. His name is Gus. I name all of my guns. It's a thing.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's funny though, because I actually bought my first holster before I had my first gun. It's like, I knew what I was going to get. And there was a long lead time for the holster. So I ordered the holster first, and I ended up getting the holster before I got the gun. And then like, as soon as I got the gun, I took it to the range first day. Like, I did some dry practice at home. I practiced with the holster. I practiced some draw stuff. And I carried like that first day. I wouldn't necessarily recommend that, but I was just at a point where like, okay, I want to do this. Like I'm comfortable. I don't think I carried chambered that first day. Like that took me a minute. And I'll get to that, but I kind of just dove right in. And I think for me, like, that's just the way I do it. Like I learn and I prepare, but then like, there's like a switch that flips and I'm like, okay, we're going head first. Like we're doing it. And so that's just kind of how I did it. But yeah, I mean, I look back and like I was carrying with just like a standard belt, like a random belt that I had in my closet for like years. Now I know better.
Yeah.
Now I know. But like back then I was like, I don't know, whatever, I'll just do it. So yeah, a lot of that trial and error, and just, you know, there's so many amazing women on Instagram posting about their concealed carry journey. And so Emily from Style Me Tactical was like the first person I found. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to try the things that she's talking about. I'm going to do what she's doing sort of, but like with my own spin on it. Right. So like, I just started seeing, like looking at what other women are doing. I think that, you know, as women, we get a lot of input from men on concealed carry, and that's great. Like I have learned so much from men, like I'm not knocking them at all, but sometimes they just don't get how things need to be different for us.
Yeah. Our bodies are a little different. So
yeah, we have other things to take into consideration.
Yes.
And so, yeah, like I just leveraged, you know, the ladies in my community that were already doing it, that maybe had more experience than I did. And then I kind of, you know, tried it, tweaked it, you know, took the next step, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I think that it can also be challenging for women concealed carrying because there's so many products on the market targeted towards women that, especially in terms of like holsters and things like that, that aren't necessarily safe.
So many pretty colors. Gosh, I get distracted. They're shiny. I don't.
All of that kind of stuff. So it's like, you know, we have all these like soft-sided holsters being shoved in our face, and it's like, oh, maybe we should not do that. So it can be a little bit difficult to kind of wade through the BS.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, once you have kind of your like basic requirements down on like all the things that you're doing, it makes it easy to wade through all that stuff, because you're like, okay, that doesn't have, you know, a hard-sided trigger protection situation happening, so I'm not even going to think about those types of products. And then you can kind of, you know, forge your own path. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it can be kind of difficult to get through the feedback from men and the subpar products made for women.
And it is trippy. It's trippy how many different like holsters, like you said, I mean, you obviously need to draw the line on safety and like, are these valid options? But I know, like, you know, you'll get on Instagram or something and you'll see a post where it's just like, it's a woman like in a cocktail dress and all of a sudden she's just pulling guns out of everywhere. I'm like, oh my God, like what? It's like, what's happening? You know, all like the drawing, you know, photos and videos for dudes is just like appendix carry, side carry, back carry, belt or whatever. And then she's like, boom, boom, purse, foot, ankle, like it's bananas. But that is something that I think, you know, is interesting for me to hear, because I mean, one, I think there are a lot of subjective opinions on concealed carry that get made objective unnecessarily. So, you know, when people are, you know, talking about, like you said, once you get through the safety issues, once you get through the validity of certain products, it starts getting into touchy territory with some people, you know, even down to what caliber are you carrying and things like that. And people get so intense about it. And like you said, you know, I got to think about what works for me, not just as a woman, just as a person living the lifestyle that I lead, you know, wearing the types of things I have to wear, you know, doing the types of things that I have to do, what's going to make that, you know, make concealed carry a viable option.
Right. Yeah, we all have a variety of factors that we have to take into consideration, and we're all different. It's like, I don't have kids, but because I'm a woman, I have so many people coming to me asking me about concealed carry when they're pregnant or concealed carrying around their kids. I'm like, I don't know. Like, I am not the best person to ask that question. But yeah, we get bucketed, I think, by our gender sometimes when it comes to these kinds of things. But yeah, I mean, again, just like finding people with similar journeys in your community, like that's been one of the biggest things that has helped me. And that's what I encourage others to do as well. Like find your people, and, share best practices, share knowledge, share what you're learning, ask questions. Big one, ask all the questions.
Yes, never any dumb questions. And I think one of your most recent posts, this will probably air in a few days, but your most recent post as of today, you kind of listed some of those Instagram accounts that are some other women in the space that you enjoy seeing what they're posting and you learn from. So, if you guys go to Monica's Instagram at Pinot and Pistols, you can kind of look at that latest post. It's one of her videos that she does so well. And she kind of talks about, how women in this community, we need to support each other, and that you've received so much support and some of the channels that you enjoy. So definitely a good resource for us to go look at. And for anyone listening to this, if you want to look at some of those channels that Monica's mentioning, she's got those listed on there. I love working with other awesome women like you, getting your voices heard, because I think sometimes those voices can get lost in the big mix of the gun industry. So I'm super excited to kind of highlight that today. But just as we kind of wrap up, so I'd love to hear, I know it's tough to kind of consolidate into 3, but your top 3 tips for a new firearms owner. So what do you think if someone bought a gun, they're like, okay, I have this new gun, I want to learn about concealed carry, EDC. What are 3 big tips that you would give them starting out as someone who's done it?
Yeah, I'd say number 1, get formal training early and often. That's definitely a big one. Like, we see so many people, women especially, who are learning from their dad or their brother or their boyfriend or their spouse or whatever it is. And that's great, but they also end up with a lot of bad habits because they're one that's not necessarily qualified to be teaching. So I think, supplement your training for sure with those fun range days with your family and friends and whoever it is, but definitely get that formal training early so you can build the right foundation and you won't have to break a whole bunch of bad habits later on. Let's see, I would say number 2, train often. I know I kind of said that. I sound like a broken record most of the time, but it's not always realistic to get the range every week or every month even. So find ways to incorporate training into your everyday life. Like for me, when I get dressed, when I put on my setup for the day, I do a few dry draws just to make sure everything's, how it needs to be. And I do a lot of dry fire practice at home, a lot. So just finding ways to incorporate that training into your day-to-day life and make it normal. It can help you make massive progress as a shooter and as a concealed carrier. And then let's see, number 3, I would say just find your community. Again, that's a lot of what we talked about today, but I think that's super important. Finding people that you can learn from or that you can help teach or that can just be your support system along the way. That's super key.
Very good.
Awesome.
And we'll have links to all of your profiles and website and everything in the show notes. You could go to faxonfirearms.com/blog and click on episode 55. And also this week, we do have a little giveaway for you. We are giving away a set of Caldwell EMAX Shadow hearing protection, as well as a BioLite Alpenglow camping light from our friends at Seven Hills Outfitters. So again, if you go to faxonfirearms.com/blog and click on episode 55, you'll find all the links to everything that Monica mentioned today and all of her profiles, as well as the entry link for the giveaway. So Monica, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Monica. It's always good to chat with you, but I'm so glad.
Always nice to see you. Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Of course.
Hi, and welcome to the Faxon blog and podcast.